I'm Rajesh and my co-host is Jemit. Our guest today is Vivek Bhargav, CEO of Dan Performance Group. Vivek is an entrepreneur, angel investor, and among other things, an accomplished table tennis player and an avid traveler. Vivek, you began your entrepreneurial journey in 97 by setting up Communicate2, which you then sold to Dentsu in 2012. You have been at Dentsu since then. You had a ringside view to how advertising and marketing have evolved through these past 25 years. Why don't you take us through that history?
Sure. So I think, let me tell you how Communicate2, the concept of Communicate2 came about and how we started. So I come from a business family where we are given this carrot that if we come and attend office, attend the exhibitions, then we send abroad every 3 months. It's only when we grew up, we realized that we were the cheapest labor our family could find because the cost of an air ticket, we would work 14 hours a day at the exhibition. We would do all the cleaning up of the stall, do everything that need to be done. Even at 12 o'clock, if the uncle needed coffee, we would get the coffee. And it was an inexpensive resource for them. And then for that trip, we would have to work the rest of our time back home also. But in those trips is when the seed of Communicate2 was sort of sown in my mind, because I was really impressed the way technology was being used in developed countries, especially the US, for marketing communication. And I always felt that Indian companies are not good at advertising and marketing, and using technology for marketing was even a bigger lacuna area. So that was the time when I told my father that I want to start something where I'll help companies in India use technology to make their marketing communication more effective. I still remember my father had said, put up a company, appoint a general manager, start it, but don't leave the family business. Because once you leave the family business, वापस नहीं आ पाओगे. And I was reading all these Zig Ziglar books and burning your boats. So I said, I will never come back. And basically left everything in the family business. And I think probably I'm a guy who's got a big ego, and that's probably the only reason that it took me 15 years to sell my company. And every time when I thought I should go back to my family business, my ego prevented me from doing so. And here I am. At least I'm so happy that my ego kept me in this business till today.
Wonderful, Vivek. And how has AdTech, MarTech, how has this world changed since those early days when you started off? I mean, 97 is like a couple of years after the internet launched in India. So is as early as one can think of. And here you are now, 25 years later, a very different world. What are the key key changes that you have seen? What's changed? What's not changed? Would be good to see how traditional media and digital, how has it evolved?
So let me give you context what 1997 was like. So 1997, I was doing digital marketing where people did not have internet and companies did not have websites. But we would still go to companies and say, we will help you in digital transformation. The digital transformation basically meant we'll put a CD-ROM into your brochure. And once we put the CD-ROM in, we say, your digital transformation is complete. You don't need anything else. So that's what we did for almost 2 to 3 years, right? But that's what the context was. So then if you take a 15-year period, right, I think the biggest change that has happened over a period of time is that the people that we are talking to today about digital, I think that's the biggest transformation, right? So what would happen is I would meet a CMO or a CEO or a promoter of a company in a party. It's very, very exciting. You must go and talk to my CEO. Then I would talk to the CEO. He said, very exciting. You must talk to a CMO. Ultimately, 2 months down the line, I'll be in front of the management trainee in the company who had no budget, no decision-making authority. And he would tell me, Vivek, this is exactly what I've been trying to tell them. But don't worry, one day I'll become CMO in this company. We'll implement everything that you have told me right now. But you should go and sell this to CMO today. I said, he only sent me to you. So he would cry on my shoulders. I would cry on his shoulders. And that's almost 10 years. That's what I did, where I cried on the shoulders of the management trainee of every single company in the country. But I think that change has happened where now the CEO or the promoter of the company wants to spend 2 hours with me on a one-to-one basis, he knows that if he doesn't understand digital himself, he is going to have challenges of remaining relevant. And I think that is the biggest change that has happened, where people have realized that if they want to retain their positions in the company or even remain relevant in the industry as a company, the promoters and the CEO themselves have to learn digital. I think that is the biggest transformation that has happened. Secondly, I think digital in the early days was a tick mark, right? You said, "Acha, digital kar rahe ho," so there is a tick mark. Even if you put 1 rupee in a budget, you say, "Okay, tick mark ho gaya, digital ho gaya." That I think has changed. Now, what has happened is that today, digital is become a sort of a central figure, a spinal cord of your strategy. And you realize that you have to involve the digital strategy guys right at the beginning of the strategy itself. And the people that you're meeting for that has changed dramatically. So I think that are the two changes. And my belief is that we're living in a digital age. Earlier, it was about digital marketing. Now, digital plays the role of a catalyst or a multiplier across every single facet of an enterprise. So it's the age we're living in. And I think that's the third change that I feel has happened in the last 15 years.
You know, one of the words you've talked about is this whole thing around mass digital. You know, take us through that journey. I mean, essentially from the era of AdWords to how digital has really become mainstream. Now, how have you seen that evolution?
Okay. So let me give you a little context on this, right? See, generally what happens is that whenever there is a dominant industry, we end up naming the new entrant, right? So if you want to do rural marketing, we call it rural marketing, right? But the thing is, we are the urban marketeers. We'll call ourselves marketeers. We call it marketing. We won't call it urban marketing. Similarly, the dominant players in those days obviously were the conventional media guys, TV, print, etc. So we named something called digital marketing. Now, what has happened is over the last 15, 20 years, digital actually has become bigger by a factor of 10 than most conventional mediums. But we still call conventional mediums as mass media, and we are saying digital as digital marketing. I think that first definition itself has to change. The time has come to drop the word digital itself, because we are 10 times the size from every single perspective you can think of. And I think, you know, what happens is that this actually happens in other industries also, right? Let's look at, if I ask you to bring a photograph, you will generally bring a digital photograph. But if I want you to get a physical photograph, I'll have to specify, you know what, please get a physical printed photograph. Same thing about music. You know, you bring me an MP3 file without calling it an MP3. But if I want you to get a CD, then I'll tell you specifically. Similarly, I think people will now start saying this campaign requires some kind of TV or analog or conventional. So you have to specify it. If you're not specifying it, it's going to be understood it's digital, because the size of it has become so significant that the new entrant now has become the dominant player. And I was doing a panel discussion yesterday, and we were talking about influencer marketing. And I was saying the same thing, that, you know, now we are defining influencer marketing. But the fact of the matter is that if that becomes tomorrow, 10 years down the line, bigger than conventional media, then that would then define itself as marketing. So I think this baton has to be passed on, where now digital, the word digital has to be dropped for marketing, because we are significantly dominant. And I think that also brings to this fact that brands were earlier built using conventional media, but now brands will need to be built using digital media, because digital is the new mass media. And I think that approach has to be very, very different. And I can elaborate on it, take you to the story of how digital has evolved over the last 20 years and how digital is now a very effective way to, or a vehicle to build brands. But the approach, the way we have approached conventional media to build brands and the way we approach digital media to build brands will have to be radically different. And most companies and most organizations don't have a clue how that is to be done.
Let's do that, Vivek. Go take us to that story.
Okay. So, okay, let's just go back in.
Yeah, that will be quite interesting.
Right. So let's just go back in time. If I were to say that, how did digital start, right? So let's put it this way, digital marketing, if we were to go back, okay, the most successful digital marketing has been Google AdWords, right? So Google AdWords can be said is the start of digital marketing, because it's a significant large industry. But let's see, when you look at Larry Page and Sergey Brin, when they came, into this industry and said, okay, you know what, we need to build advertising models. What should we do? So it was almost like, you know, what are the flaws the conventional media has? Let's try to see if we can remove those flaws. So they said, okay, what is the first flaw? You know, the big guys get big discounts. So if you're Unilever, you could get 70% discount on the price of advertising. You say, you know what, we want to democratize it. Everybody should have a similar price. So what we'll do is we'll create an auction engine and we'll give pricing which is based on auction. What will decide the price is how relevant the advertising is to the end user, the consumer. So I think it was a very effective strategy of removing this one evil of conventional advertising pricing. Then I said, you know what, the other thing is, I want to buy a washing machine and the conventional media tries to sell me a car. Can I now, I'm already capturing the intent. Can I serve him an ad based on an intent? It was wonderful, right? I'm searching on a washing machine. I get an ad of a washing machine. So, you know what, now we'll make advertising intent based. The third thing they said was that, you know what, it's not measurable. This medium is all non-census based. So let's you know, instead of extrapolating consumer behavior, 150 million users with 30, 40,000 those meters in television, we will now measure every single thing. So they made it almost clicks, visits, Google Analytics, Google AdWords clicks, everything was measurable, right? So they made it measurable. Now what happened was that I think these three things were amazing and it grew very, very rapidly to almost 10, 20, $30 billion in advertising, right? In a very quick period of 10 years. So it was amazing. The only thing is the total advertising dollars are almost $600 billion. So you were getting hardly 5% of that share. The reason you were getting 5% of that share was that if you take advertising, the entire funnel of the traditional awareness, interest, desire, and action, the digital was only occupying the action phase of the buying cycle. The awareness, interest, and desire was not being captured because the thing is the three benefits that conventional media had, digital actually had not discovered how to deliver it. So let's take what are the three benefits, right? The first benefit obviously was reach. Conventional media in those days obviously had a significantly larger reach as compared to digital media. Second benefit was the ability to deliver frequency. The thing is that you could, even if you give a print ad, if you don't have 8 inserts, you're not going to actually communicate effectively. But the problem was in search, I don't know what you're going to search for next. So delivering frequency was extremely difficult, right? How do you deliver frequency? There was no platform where you would come again and again. So again, delivering frequency was a challenge. And I think the third biggest thing was the ad unit. So imagine those days, ad unit was either a text ad or it was like this annoying banner of Punch the Monkey kind of banner, right? So the ad unit was substandard and obviously couldn't communicate the brand the way it should be done. So in the last 10 years, I think the biggest change that has happened is that digital acquired these capabilities of these three benefits that conventional media had. First thing, reach came in. So today, if you take digital in India, the Times Group, the entire group put together, the circulation would be 32 million, right? One single platform, a small platform like Instagram has 150 million users, Facebook has 400, and WhatsApp, though I don't know. I think the internet population of the country is just one. And this is, we're just talking about one company, right? So that's what the size of digital has become. So obviously reach is not a problem. Reach is tenfold of conventional mediums. I think frequency, what has happened is platforms which take a user to the platform multiple times in a day, like Facebook, was one start of it. So social media was a start of delivering frequency effectively. But then concepts like remarketing, custom audiences, a lot of these things has also allowed us to create a lot more ability to deliver frequency, not only frequency, sequence of frequency. So I can show you an ad, and only if you've seen the first ad, then I can show you the second one. Seen the second one, then I can deliver you the third one, which was not possible in any other medium. So I can show, if a person goes from awareness to action in one day, I could actually show him 4 ads and take him to action. Right? So delivery of frequency was sequential also, which wasn't possible earlier, right? And the other thing that happened was that the ad unit changed. So now we have a screen which is close to us. That screen is a phone screen, like I have a Samsung Fold. This screen close to my eyes is equivalent to a 60-inch television screen. And there is nothing in the middle of it. So I'm seeing a video in it. The voice is amazing. I have virtual reality, I have augmented reality. So the ad unit has become significantly superior, if not equal, definitely, I would say it's not better, it's at least equal to conventional media units. But I think the biggest benefit is, the way I look at it is, that one should not compare the ad unit of conventional media with ad unit of digital, because the ad unit of digital extends to a destination. So if I click on a banner or I see a video and I go somewhere, I go to this page where I'm getting a 3D view of the car and I can rotate it and I can open the boot and change the upholstery, all that is still the ad unit. In conventional media, I have to take that user out, basically interrupt the user's content and show him an ad unit. That's what the limitation was. Here I can continue that journey. So once reach came in, frequency came in, and the quality of the ad unit became superior to conventional media, now I don't see any reason why digital cannot be used to build brands. But again, the challenge out there is that now what happens is that you're talking about a completely different animal. The approach of how do you approach digital to build brands is radically different than the way we have approached brands or building brands in the conventional media world.
So a question for you, Vivek, essentially is that how does it work differently from a consumer perspective? We've talked of the marketer viewpoint. How does the consumer see things? Has that changed or is that still the same?
So the way I look at it, Rajesh, that consumer actually doesn't care. So let me give you a very interesting example. My father must have been 70 years at that point in time. I had bought him this Creative MP3 player. So what happened was, that was this big, large device, which had, I think even those days, probably 5 GB of memory. And what I did was, I took all his CDs, converted them into MP3 and uploaded on his device. So he was very upset, I don't want this device, I don't want to use it, what have you done, etc. Right? And then he figured out, after 10, 15 repetitions of teaching him, then how he can use that device. And then what happened was, when he was traveling, he could take that device with him wherever he went. And trust me, after that, he was so overjoyed with the ability to carry all his 100 CDs wherever he went. He never went back to his CDs in the real sense of the word. Once in a while, he would put the CD into the thing, but that device became his accompaniment, right? So he doesn't know MP3, he doesn't know digital music, he just is a user. So today, when a 17-year-old Gen Z watches television, now he doesn't know the difference between broadcast media and Netflix. If he's watching Tata Sky and switches to Prime or Netflix, he's not thinking in his mind that, oh, I was watching broadcast television and now I'm shifting to an online thing on Netflix. It's almost device based, right? I'm watching television or I'm watching a device. So device could be a phone, but the content, how it's being given to that phone, is a back-end thing that marketers like us worry about. The consumer doesn't care. The thing is, when you take a photograph, right? The consumer shifted to phones, and like, I remember I have this very nice camera and I should obviously tag it along with my holidays. And in the early days, my teenage daughter would carry it. And then we had this discussion. She said, Papa, if you want to take this camera on our holidays, only on one condition, you'll have to carry it all the time, right? We have no problems. You take it. And since that day, I've never taken the camera to any of my holidays, because it's 90% there. And, honestly, the difference isn't, I don't want to go through that painting that camera across all the vacations that I go to, right? So the consumers shift without even realizing that shift has happened. It happens, it's your children growing up. You don't see them grow up. You meet somebody after 10 years, you feel, okay, the person has slimmed down or grown in height or whatever. But your children, you don't see them grow up, right? They just grow up in front of you. Same way, I think we adopt new technologies without even realizing the technology in the backend has changed. What happens is, when the backend technology changes, us marketers have to realize now that the technology has changed and our approach of what we should do things earlier has to change. And that's where I'm coming from, that the way you build brands on digital has to be different, because now the same consumer is probably consuming the same content but through a different platform, through a different pipe. And that pipe has a lot more capabilities, probably has some limitations. How do you ensure that you keep that limitations in mind? And how do you ensure that you take full advantage of those capabilities? That's where the way I would put this.
So Vivek, I think what you're saying is very interesting, where there are micro changes that the consumer has gone through. What are these now challenges for the agency servicing the marketeer in this? Do you see changes happening in the business model? Do you see changes happening in the productivity? Do you see changes happening in the tools that the agency is able to bring on board with the marketer to help address these changes?
Yeah. So I think, so what I'm going to do is, there are two ways I'm going to answer this question, right? First, I think the approach, the way one builds brands, works with agencies need to change. And I'll elaborate that a little bit. And then I'll talk about how the challenge agencies face and what needs to be done about it, right? So let's take, first of all, the basic differences between the traditional mediums and the new mediums that are available to us today. So a good planner, if he has to utilize conventional media effectively, we always said, right, he should be a person who knows how to minimize waste, right? So if you don't target a product for, let's say, acne, you will take, okay, most of the audience is going to be female, 15 to 28. So you will buy some teenage magazines, some Femina. So you minimize the waste as much as possible, right? So that's the way you approach that campaign. And a good planner will minimize the waste. The funny part is digital works completely opposite. Digital is about maximizing efficiencies. So you start with a person who's searching for acne, right? Somebody who's looking for an acne cream. Now he could be male, female, age could be 14 or 30, may not be in the TG. It could be a 45-year-old guy who's got acne, who knows, right? But this guy is the perfect guy because now he's searching for a product that you have to sell. So now what happens is, let's take an example that you will take $100 budget. You will start with the first dollar towards the most effective spend for that $1, which goes to the guy who's searching for acne cream. Then you go further. Then you go to, the next person who's searching for, makeup for wedding, whatever, XYZ, right? Then you go on. So every dollar you spend becomes less and less efficient. But what happens is that by the time your $100 gets over, you can put a hand to your heart and know that every single money that you spend was spent in maximizing efficiencies. Maybe the number of people, if your budget is 100 and number of people who are searching for acne cream itself utilizes your entire 100, then it's still worth it, right? Because that 100 would give you the best ROI. So you may not spend anything beyond that one audience that you got. But if you have a larger budget and your budget is 10,000, then you spend 100 on this and the next 100 on something else till the time your 10,000 gets over. So just imagine, right? That's the way digital should be approached. And that's the way, at least we as an agency have always approached in performance. That, let me share with you one interesting example, which sort of specifies and demonstrates what I say about this, right? So about 10 years ago, this movie had come out called Cocktail, which had this female, nobody would remember right now, but Dinah Penty and Deepika Padukone, right? And Alok Shah, who's a friend of mine from Garden Silk Mills, they were wanted to advertise Garden Varelli because they were, Dinah Penty was their brand ambassador, okay? So they gave us a budget to promote, sort of have keywords, have ads around Dinah Penty, Deepika, Cocktail, etc. So we put some keywords in, one of them was Dinah Penty, etc., right? But what we found the next day, if we had a 100 rupee budget, 99 of that went to Deepika and Cocktail and Saif, and probably 50 paisa went to Dinah Penty. Right? Now the thing is that our brand ambassador, so now this is actually not effective advertising, right? Because maximizing efficiency doesn't work. So what we did was, we put a keyword and all the possible combination of Dinah Penty. We said, okay, 16 rupees is getting spent completely on Dinah Penty. And now it's exhausted everything that we could do with Dinah Penty. Remaining money we'll spend on Deepika Padukone and Cocktail, which is still relevant, but 16 rupees should go, because we do other way around, 50 paisa will go here and 99.5 will go to others, right? So that's how maximizing efficiency works. We've done that for sports. We put 20 keywords in, or 20, let's say, profiles of sports in Facebook, let's say segments, right? And what happens is cricket takes 100% of the budget. Then nothing comes to table tennis and squash and other sports. And then you realize that, you know what, cricket is not a sport, it's a religion. You need to be taken out of this thing. And that's how you maximize efficiencies. So that's how this approach should be different, because it's all about maximizing efficiencies versus minimizing waste, right? That's the first difference. Second thing is that in conventional media, nobody tells you that, hey Vivek, this ad is so good, I'm going to give you a 95% discount on the TV rate, right? The ad is so brilliant, right? But the thing is, digital does that, right? Digital tells you, what, this ad is so good, we are getting 28% click-through rate, I'll give you a 95% discount because it's very relevant to the consumer. But that's what happens, right? So now imagine you're building brands on conventional media where one is a rate card and the other is an auction, and the auction actually rewards relevancy and content and other things, and the other one doesn't, then obviously approach has to be different. It can't be the same, right? If you take the third one, right? One medium measures 150 million households based on what, 40,000 meters. And imagine, right, if I remember right, I think physically still somebody has to visit that guy's house and collect that data. So anybody who's willing to get interrupted once in a week when somebody comes into your house, and imagine post-COVID world, right? Imagine a person coming to your house every week who's gone to hundreds of other households. Are you going to allow that guy to come in or not? Right? And that guy who's willing to do that and allow that to happen, he can't be given cash. He has to be given some kind of gift. And I'm sure after 5 years, 10 years, they must have exhausted the kind of gifts you can give to this guy. But he's the guy who's deciding the behavior of 150 million households. I'm sure at least our households don't fall into that. And I haven't met a single guy in my life who has a meter at home, right? So at least the people who I meet who could be good consumers, hopefully, at least are not the ones who are deciding how the TV media needs to be spent or extrapolated. But imagine this, right? Digital is a census-based medium. Sometimes I talk to CMOs, he say, digital doesn't have good measurement, there should be a measurement that I can understand. So that means, just imagine, right? You're asking a medium to become ineffective, become inferior, so that you can understand it. I think that's very idiotic ask to give somebody, right? But the fact of the matter is a census-based behavior. It should not be compared, right? So again, the approach obviously has to be different, right? Second, the last point I want to raise, and then I'm going to cover the agency bit. Imagine that generally what happens is that all optimization of conventional media, right, is actually done pre-launch. So you make the TV commercial, you put it, and then you basically, all the optimization you could have done is done before. It can't be done after. Digital, what happens is that you actually take a compass in your hand and you start working, right? And you launch it, and then you optimize it and optimize it and optimize it. So it's almost like real time you're getting feedback. Even the maximizing efficiency approach, right, is taking 5% of the budget, identifying the right segment, then spending more monies on it, again finding the right segment, spending more monies on it. But that means the optimization is done post-launch. So imagine you are now taking something which was to be done pre-launch and comparing with something that needs to be done post-launch. Again, very, very radical approach is needed, right? And this is where I think the agency problem comes in. See, what happens is, if I'm negotiating this pencil with you, right? So now what happens is, you've told me that I'm willing to buy this pencil for 5 rupees, but your list price is 10 rupees. So now I can't do this, that I take this pencil away, say, don't worry, sir, I have a 5 rupee pencil for you. Say, no, you want this pencil for 5 rupees. I can't change the pencil, right? But that works in the conventional media world, because the TV ad you would have got, the creative you would have got, you will decide whether it goes live or not. So now what happens is that negotiation has worked in the conventional media world when you're selling a pencil, and I consider conventional media is selling a pencil because everything is pre-launch, right? But now we need to apply that metric to digital. So just imagine, right? You force me to give you this pencil of 5 rupees. My cost price of the pencil is 8 rupees. So in the conventional media world, I would have said no, right? But in digital, I say yes. Because I'm going to lose the business otherwise, no? I know that somebody else who's promised you a 5 rupee pencil is giving you a different pencil. So I'll give you that pencil, no? That pencil means what? Basically, it means is that either I'll reduce the quality of resources that I put to your campaign, right, in terms of talent, or I'll spend lesser number of man hours for you. If I'm willing to give you the same product at half the price, that means I was cheating you earlier, right? Otherwise, there should be no reason I should agree. And if I have agreed, that means in my mind, I've already decided that I'm going to give you an inferior product. But imagine what it does to you as a brand. You are going to spend 100 rupees on media, and let's say 10 rupees was going to go to the agency. Now you cut the agency fee by 5 rupees, and now you're spending 95 rupees on media. So just imagine, right? 5 rupees reduction in agency is wiping out his profit. He gives you the same product. So he's not going to do that. But actually, the profit of publishers is 60-70%. So if the publisher would have got 10 rupees or 5 rupees less, it would have not made any difference to him. He's going to give you the same media. So now imagine if the agency was incentivized to give you better quality talent, more man hours, by instead of giving him 10 rupees, give him 15 rupees. I think he would save you 20-30 rupees on media. And that's how digital should have been structured. But the problem is we make that 4 rupees, 3 rupees, 2 rupees. I think it's a matter of time and somebody's going to say, boss, main free mein kaam karunga, right? But just imagine, then you're going to put 100 rupees on media and you get 20 rupees efficiency from it. So you're wasting all the monies that basically you're saving significantly more than that on the media part of it. Okay, and the other difference is, right, generally if you take conventional media, 100 rupees is spent, let's say, on media. 1.5 rupees goes towards planning, 1.5 rupees goes towards creative, 97 rupees actually goes to the media, right? Times of India, Star, whatever you would call it, right? Digital actually doesn't work that way. So digital, if you take, there is content creation, there could be web presence creation, apps, properties, websites, etc. There's analytics. There could be some technology like ML and AI that has to be used. There's first party data collection. There is a CRM engine that plugs in thereafter. There is an entire advertising optimization. The auction engine has to be optimized. So now what happens is, in your mind, if you've taken 3 rupees for all these costs, and now you try to take all these 20 things that I mentioned in that 3 rupees, then you're going to get substandard across all those things, right? But what if you would say that, okay, you know what? I have a 100 rupee budget. I'm going to put 35 rupees towards all these things so that my 65 rupees becomes more efficient. And what we discussed earlier, right? If one click, you can get it at 1/10 the price. If your ad is more relevant, just one of the metrics, that means we're talking about only creative. That means your 65 rupees, theoretically speaking, could have given you much more clicks than what 100 can give you. So spending the 35 rupees, you'll amortize that cost immediately. I'm not even saying future. Forget the lifetime value, net present value, more profitable customers, all those things. You get it now. So if 100 rupees gives you 100 clicks, I can guarantee you, if you do all the things that I said, that 65 rupees on media that you give, you will get more than 100 clicks. So you immediately amortize the cost of all the things immediately, right now. So again, I come back to this, that the approach that one looks at has to be radically different, because now we're talking about a completely different animal called digital, which actually is a combination of a lot of mediums we've used in the past, right? So if you use newspapers, the job to be done of a newspaper is information dissemination. Now we're doing that across the day, right? So one part of digital is allowing you engagement of digital. If the role of television, the job to be done, Clay Christensen, Professor Clay Christensen in that Harvard Disruptive Strategy talks about the job to be done, right? The job to be done for each of these conventional mediums, if it's entertainment, there are different aspects of digital that are creating the entertainment. So digital is actually pan mediums. It's important to know that we're not talking about digital as a medium. It's not like how TV is a medium, digital is a medium. Digital actually is a combination of all these things put together, and we are living in a digital age. So each of these mediums play a role. And that's where the strength can be customer acquisition, like Google AdWords is great in customer acquisition. Some mediums are good for information dissemination. So let's say a Twitter would be good for information dissemination. Some things are better in understanding consumer trends. So a lot of social media listening is useful in understanding consumer trends. So the way to use digital is that you have a business outcome that you want to achieve. And how do you use different aspects of digital to get that business outcome? And I think that is where I think the biggest challenge lies, is how are you going to compensate the ecosystem appropriately to use this effectively. Let me share one interesting story of UK. So there used to be a guy called Nikesh Arora in Google. He was the head of sales. Probably he's best known for having the highest salary anybody had in the world, right? So $400 odd million, and then he topped it with SoftBank. But what he did was very interesting. He went to the UK market and he said that we'll create something called best practices funding. So what he did was that he said, if you have this kind of growth rate, I will give you, let's say, at the peak of it, 15% of the spends that you do on Google AdWords also. So all the agencies, obviously, none of the clients would have their in-house teams, because the agency would get 15% and the clients would not get that. So everybody had to, so even the biggest guy, Money Supermarket, would spend it through the agency, and the agency would give him 10% back, 12% back, but the smaller clients would get 15%. So if you just look at the total percentage of digital marketing and digital in UK and compare it with all other countries, including US, UK is almost double of US. I've done offshore work for both UK and US. The quality of talent in UK on digital marketing is superior. So what happened was, not only the industry grew. So if, let's assume that if the percentage of spends on digital in UK, you compare that and the same percentage was there in US, the market cap of Google today would have been double of what it is today, right? So if total spends on digital in UK is 40%, I think US is almost half of that. And the only reason I can attribute, the only outlier was this concept of best practices funding, where the quality of talent that moved in, the amount of monies they made, the amount of push they were able to do to spend more monies on digital. Even the conventional agencies were making more margins, right? So they went and sold digital. And I think that one single outlier could have doubled the market cap of Google. That means right now, compensating the ecosystem, if it's done well, it can actually have a multiply impact, especially to publishers, right? Because just imagine, right? You compensate an agency 5% more, and they end up investing, making people spend even 20% more for the publisher. The publisher gets 15% net profit from that additional 20, while that 5% for an agency would be tripling his profit. He'll hire better quality talent. He'll put in more time. He'll put in more effort. He'll utilize the media more effectively. He'll give better returns on that media. So even for the publishers, it is actually in their interest that the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is not an advertising agency alone, right? It's a content creator, it's an influencer management platform, it's a CRM company, it's the analytics company, is the all the SSPs of the world, etc. Right? The whole ecosystem, if they were given more monies, I think the industry would grow far more rapidly, and the clients would get better ROI from that. The publisher would get better ROI. So if you ask me, and UK is a great example to see what could have happened for the rest of the world. But unfortunately, Nikesh left, the best practices funding was stopped. A lot of agencies in sort of UK went bankrupt because of it. And now we've gone in the last 30 years from hiring IIM Ahmedabad guys to hiring a person who doesn't get into any other industry. The last option, his last stop is advertising.
So Vivek, what you're basically saying is that there is a real opportunity to reinvent the agency model or the brand agency relationship for the future.
Absolutely. See, I think just imagine, right? When you sell a product for $100, let's say 1 to 2% of that is spent on advertising. Out of that 2% spent on advertising, let's say agency gets 5%. That means you are talking about, you sell a product for $100, the agency gets 10 cents, right? Now the thing is, he's going to use that 10 cents to hire people, give time and resources towards whatever he does. But he could have an impact of increasing your profits by $5, your revenues by $30. So just imagine, right? If somebody would come and tell you that I can increase your profit by $5 or increase your revenues by $30, I want a share of that. Sharma Shrumi mein, like, even by embarrassment, would you not offer him at least $1? If I increase your profits by $5, why would you not offer that guy at least $1? But right now he's earning 10 cents. And that 10 cents he has to share with data partners. So when the data partner comes who could have increased your profit by $10, he tells the data partner, I'll give you 1 cent. I'll give you 2 cents. He said, dude, I can increase that guy's profit by $10. He said, but you know what? I know you can increase the profit by $10, but I'm going to get only a percentage share of the 10 cents. So maximum I can give you is 1-2 cents because that's my profit margin. But uske baad mein, I can't give you any more monies, right? So then what do? So I go to the cheaper data partner who reduces the profitability from $10 to $2. Then also I may go to even a more cheaper data partner. So basically what happens is, finally, when the time I make profit, I've actually reduced your profit by 50%. Because in order to make my 1 cent, I've reduced your profit by $20, $30. And that's how this ecosystem works. So it's just misaligned, right? And the thing is, we're seeing that, right? As I think it's just sad that if you take the quality, so just imagine, right? No agency bills for senior management. We're not allowed to.
Yeah.
Consultants bill, lawyers bill, everybody bills, right? They say that bad lawyers may cost less, but good, or good lawyers may cost more, but the bad lawyers make you pay forever, right? Has somebody calculated the amount of time senior management is able to spend on any client problems and solve their problems? Imagine, right? I became successful because 15 years ago, I was rolling up my sleeves and working with clients and solving their clients' problems on a day-to-day basis. As we became larger, we realized that we don't get billed. So the best value I can give back to a network and advertising agency is to have some ideas that I can share and almost like wing it, right? I'm almost like, I'll go to a meeting and I know I'll be able to wing it because I've got 20 years of experience. And I'm actually just getting more and more business because my ability to wing it is superior. But once the project comes, how much time do we all spend? And it's not limited to Dentsu or Netcore or all of us, right? The time, because the thing is that there is no compensation. So we get compensation by spending. So just imagine, right? Without trying to sound condescending, but how do you incentivize an advertising agency to spend more time, right? When the negotiation of the last 20 years has been, how do you take that 15% and make it 1%? So I think that model needs to be explored, and actually somebody has to do a study, right? And even I think the measurement is the other challenge, right? I think all digital guys unfortunately started off with that we are superior in measurement because that's what Google told us. But the fact of the matter is, I would love to fund a study where we take the amount of man-hours people spend for every dollar spent on digital, measuring it, and compare it with every dollar that is spent on conventional media and the time that is spent on measuring it. I generally feel if you calculate the total bandwidth of management that goes in measuring digital, I think it could be probably more than the amount of money we spend on digital. Because every dollar that is spent is measured to the last cent, right? While we would spend $100 on something else and we can measure it within 5 minutes, one report, and we get the result. It's like, oh, you know what? This created 3% more of unaided brand recall. Good enough, yeah. Let's move on. Now let's go and measure digital for the next 500 hours.
Vivek, one question for you. How do you build brands in the digital age?
Okay, so I think the first thing is, right, we discussed that how conventional media is radically different from digital media. So the approach has to be different. So I'll just say and sort of talk about a certain approach. It's obviously not a complete thing, but what are the key things that you need to keep in mind if you're trying to build brands in digital age? So the first thing I want to start off with is that we have to end this whole concept of SEC, A, B, C, and whatever that is called, right? Just imagine if you just go back in time, why was that created? Okay, why was SEC, A and all these things created? Because the media had the limitation of targeting certain audiences, and they had to group all these audiences together. And because we could only group 3 to 4 different groups together, that's the reason this thing was created. So the limitations of media forced us to create these audiences, and now we continue to utilize it when the limitations of media no longer exist. So let me give you one example, right? We used to work with a timeshare company, one of the biggest timeshare companies, and they had this metric of the person should have a car for him to be sort of qualified. If he doesn't have a car, then he needs to be a PhD for him to qualify. Now that's idiotic. In the world of Uber and Ola's, a lot of people who be earning 50 lakh rupees and above may not have a car. So your entire concept of how do you define a target audience, what was defined from a media limitation point of view, has to completely change, right? So let's put it this way, right? If I had to think of audiences, what if you had, instead of SECA, you had SECA 129? And how is SECA 128 different from 129? Because one guy has 2 sons and the other guy has 1 son and 1 daughter. Everything else is exactly the same. You could just imagine, this is how it is going to be, right? You're going to have millions of audiences. You're going to have a segment of one. So your brief cannot start with the limitation of the medium as a part of the brief. So the first thing you have to do is, your audience in this world of maximizing efficiencies has to start off completely differently. Your audience is the person who can buy your product. He's not the audience who has a car or a fridge or some of these other metrics you used in the erstwhile media world. Okay. Second, I think tenet of this approach is the ratio of media cost versus all the other costs that you invest in brand building. So generally what happens is that in the conventional media, as we discussed, 2-3% will go towards all the costs, and 97% of that goes to the publisher and the media. In the digital world, there are hundreds of things to be done, right from content creation, right from analytics, the AI and machine learning required for it, the user experience design, and 20 things that exist. So if you try to take 3% and compensate all these players, the technologies behind it, etc., within the 3%, you'll end up wasting most of your media cost. So the way I would look, if you're spending more than 65% of your cost towards media in digital brand building, that means you're wasting monies. So the way to look at it is that how do we make sure that utilized that 65% more efficiently by spending more monies on all things that are relevant to it. And the way I gave an example earlier was very simple, that if 100 rupees gives you 100 clicks, how do you ensure that you spend 35 rupees in such a manner that 65 rupees ends up giving you more than 100 clicks? So if you just take a simple concept called content, the digital is made up of 3 pillars. There is paid media, there is organic, and there is social. If you take content, allows you to reduce your paid media cost because your relevancy goes up, you get more CTRs, and content gives you a multiplier on your paid media and reduces your paid media cost. All of our organic traffic comes only because of content. So automatically all the traffic you get for free is going to come because of content. All of engagement in social media happens because of content. So your edge rank on Facebook and other mediums goes up because you have good content. So imagine if everybody would take 10 rupees of their total media cost, put it into content creation for the audiences that they want to engage with. If they allowed them to get the remaining 90%, get more shares, more value, lesser cost of across all the 3 pillars that I named, and the 90 rupees that they spend on media would give them better returns. By spending 10 rupees, and imagine that 10 rupees will become their intellectual property for the future use, will continue to give them multiplier on all the media that they do in the future. True. So imagine just taking 10 rupees out, and this is just one example out of the 35 rupees taking out that can give you a multiplier on your media cost. So the first important tenet is that you have to make sure that make your media cost limited to 65% of your total budget to spend on a campaign. If you're spending anything more than that, I think brand building on digital becomes more and more difficult. I think the third tenet for me is the way we look at an ad unit. In the digital world, what you do is you have to use the ad unit probably like a hook. The purpose of the ad unit is to create that interest where the person clicks on it. But the remaining, even the awareness, interest, and desire can actually be created as a destination. So let me clarify. When you see a TV ad, there is no destination there. But with digital ad, there is a destination that you can go to. So you can continue the advertising on the homepage of your website, on the app that you brought him to the iPad app that you open where he could now rotate the car. So the way you look at the ad unit is in digital, it's a combination of the unit and the destination. Combined together is the ad unit. So the way you look at the ad unit has to be very different. And I think, again, the investments that you make in creating a VR, AR world for the destination should become a part of the creative cost. So don't put it as 1.5%. Maybe you'll spend 5% on creative or 10% on creative, because your creative will again create a larger multiplier on your media. See, all of this boils down to this one thing, that we are talking about dynamically priced medium in a dynamically priced environment. So anything that reduces the cost of advertising significantly by investing 1 rupees in that thing, if it reduces your cost of advertising by 5 rupees, then that 1 rupees is a no-brainer investment which gets amortized immediately. So you don't even have to look at lifetime value, etc. I think the fourth thing I covered already, content is a very critical strategy. So brands, see, just imagine, right? Today as a brand, when you're trying to build brands, what you do is you interrupt content on a medium which talks about minimizing waste. And then you try to engage them with advertising. And that's the reason creative and disruption and let's put it this way, the more clutter breaking your ad is, the more impact it can supposedly have. Your audience is limited. Suppose you have an audience, looking at it, there are 19,000 companies in India out of 63 million who actually have more than 10 crores of let's say, authorized capital or whatever. There are only 70,000 people who have they pay more than 1 crore rupees of taxes in India. So you're looking at it, if you take a luxury brand, your target audience in India is less than 1 million. That's it. So you rather create content which is targeted towards that million. Figure out ways in which engaging with them, because they are going to give you 90% of your consumption. Now you may spend 10% of your budget towards giving out free content to the remaining 50 million people, 100 million people. Why are you giving it? Because those 100 million people would like to see a Rolex and say, "Acha yaar, Rolex pehna hua hai," right? But he's not going to buy it. So you may have to have some budgets for not your TG, because the person who wears a Rolex and kisi ne dekha bhi nahi, appreciate nahi kiya, so then it's not going to be very valuable to him, right? So, but 90% of the budget should go to that 1 million people in India who can afford that object. So I think that right now you can actually build a complete brand without any advertising, and all the advertising you do is create content and then use advertise to promote that content. And the brand communication should happen through the consumption of content, because that's where you get a lot of time with the consumer rather than interrupting the user. But it's like, let's say Coke Studio is a great example, right? So you invest a lot of money in creating a platform, and the brand communication happens through a platform like Coke Studio. But there are hundreds of brands who can afford their own mini versions of Coke Studio for the niche audiences that they want to reach out to, they want to engage with whom they want to spread awareness and they want to build a brand with. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be the consumer's experience with you and your services that builds a brand. Because today it's almost like one-to-one branding, right? It's my experience or my friends or associates' experience with the brand or the service. That's how a brand is built. I think the fourth tenet for me is, or the fifth tenet for me is this concept called web presence. Right now what happened, there's a lot of brands. So, I've had this sort of talk with a lot of promoters and CEOs, and I generally ask in a conference that how many of us in this room today are very happy with the websites that we have? And almost no hands go up. Because what happens is everybody is in this eternal process of revamping their website. In this last 20 years, only 10% of the audience is actually going to websites. 90% of the audience is not even going to websites. They're engaging with content on apps, on YouTube and Facebook and other platforms. But a lot of us are still in this eternal process of revamping our websites. While sometimes people just go to the website to know the address of the user of the shop or whatever XYZ, right? But we're still in that mode. So how do you actually build a brand if you are still revamping your websites? Instead of that, if you would invest the same monies in building an app, building a game, and for me, content is a game. Content could be a video, content could be a blog, content could be what we are recording right now. So the challenge is, right, just imagine, right, if you had to do this interview and put it on CNBC, instead of that, we do this interview and the amount of money you would have gone to CNBC, you spend it on marketing this. Imagine the multiplier you will get, because that 5 crore rupees you have spent on television will reach out to this minimized waste audience, out of which only 19,000 people can potentially give Netcore any business in the future. Because that's the number of companies in the universe of India. So just imagine, right? What if you could write to 19,000 of them a LinkedIn request, email, $5 per email. That's it, right? That's $100,000, $150,000 well spent with this interview. That's how it should be done, right? And that's what brands need to do. What's your TG? How do you build a brand with that TG? And that's all one needs to do. But in the conventional media world, we didn't have a choice. So we had to follow the other way of doing it, which they've done so well. I think it's very important to measure brand building through digital exactly the same way we measure through any other medium. I think that's the sixth tenet for me. The problem is that we try to measure digital with clicks and leads and visits and all those other metrics, while we try to measure other mediums through unaided brand recall and whatever other methods people have. So I think we should have just one single method of measurement. If the method of measurement ideally should be, what is the business value that a brand can get from that measurement? So let's say if you're a real estate guy, maybe a site visit is a good metric. So then use the site metric for every single thing that you spend on media, and that it should not change that, oh, you know what, people have heard, or how many people called me after my campaign is my metric for brand measurement. In fact, I was going to, one was the research study that I wanted to fund. The second study I wanted to fund was a team of people who will just give calls to CMOs and CEOs that I saw your banner. Because they get so many calls that we need somebody to call them and say, you had this beautiful banner that was moving sideways and upwards and downwards, and we loved it. So I think that investment will pay very, very good returns in my mind. So I think it's important to measure exactly the same way. I think the measurement should not change depending on the medium you're using for brand building. Whatever the metric is, actually, I'm not even specifying it has to be a digital metric or a physical metric, or if you've done a brand survey for the last 10 years, please do exactly the same survey. Don't change it at all. If you ask 5 questions, then you ask the 5 questions now. Same audience, same questions, the medium and platform has changed. I think that's the way, because I think measuring the awareness, interest, desire, and action, all of it put together is very, very critical, because I've seen a lot of brands, what they do is they measure awareness, interest, and desire in conventional media, and they try to measure action only in digital. That's not a fair way to measure it if you really want to build brands. Okay, the last tenet that I would say, summarizing this, is that I think if you take the 4 Ps, you've talked about them changing to something else. I talk about pipe and personalization. So what is the goal of a brand? A lot of advertising should help us get new users or more profitable users, rather than get the same users we already have. So if our goal should be, as brands, what is the brand building? Brand building means that the same people continue buying from us without us having to advertise to them. If you have to keep on advertising to them, that means I don't have a brand. So either I should be able to charge more, or I should be able to get incremental sales without advertising more. All advertising should lead to incremental sales. So if I'm able to build a pipe with the customer, have the first party data with him, then through CRM, I'm able to communicate with him, I don't need to advertise to that guy. In fact, I should not be advertising to that guy. I should be able to identify the best guys out of that guys that are giving me the most amount of profits, most amount of revenues, and then use that budget that now I have saved to advertise to similar guys like him, which are new guys who are not my customers. Because a lot of money gets wasted advertising to the same guy who's already buying my product. It's an absolute waste. So if you want to do brand building on digital, I think that money should be spent on acquiring new people who are the most profitable customers that you can get. Right? That's the way I think is the 7th tenet I have. So let me summarize this into 4 key points. Right? First thing is, building brands on digital is possible now, because digital has now not only removed the certain flaws that conventional mediums had, but all the benefits they had have now been sort of acquired by digital. But it requires a different approach because the mediums are different. And I think that is a very critical thing, that you use the old approach and then you fail at brand building on digital and you say that, digital cannot build brands. I think it's a very wrong way to look at the same problem. Thirdly, I think it requires a lot more effort. So when I said that 35%, one other thing I would put out there is, if you're spending 100 crores on television, suppose it requires 100 hours of effort. To spend 100 crores on digital, it probably requires 2,000 hours of effort. But the 1,900 hours that you have to spend, both as your own internal team, as well as the agency ecosystem, please take it out of the media budget. So what you do is, if that effort takes 5 crore rupees, take that 5 crore rupees out of that 100 crores, spend that 5 crore rupees, because then the same philosophy, the 95 crores will work harder. So that effort that is required, if you try to take it out of the same 3%, then you're going to fail. So I'm not only talking about the agency ecosystem, I'm talking about you, your team personally. The CMO should feel that if I spend 100 crores on digital and it requires 10 times more effort than spending 100 crores on television, just for that sake, let me just spend 100 crores on television. At least I'll have lesser challenges of spending the 100 crores. But if he's given 5 crores additional to spend 100 crores on digital, so that your 95 crores works harder and gives you 3 times more ROI than television, then he would do so. So I think that investment is required, and you have to realize that it is, so they say there is no pain, there is no gain. So I think spending 100 crores on digital requires a lot more effort. And I think anybody who decides to do that, even internally from the organization point of view, should be compensated more than what you would get compensated when you're spending the same 100 crores on digital. And I think it's a very, very critical point, which a lot of organizations miss out on, and then prevents them from doing so, right? So I think this is, in a nutshell, very, very briefly, how brands must be built on digital. If we follow at least, and as I said, right, this is the way you look at it as a compass. These are some tenets that I've, in the last 20 years of experience, realized people who have used brand building for digital have utilized these tenets and got tremendous amount of benefits from it. But you can add to it and subtract from it. So these are not, this is a compass. This is not a blueprint that this is how exactly how it has to be done. But hope this acts like a compass in the right direction and helps a lot of marketers build awesome, stupendous brands on digital.
I think that's interesting, Vivek, what you're saying. And there was an interesting thing that you spoke about, that you want people to go to the CMOs and say, hey, I saw your banner. And this reminds me of the good old days where we used to buy hoardings on the path of the CEOs while he was coming to work or going to work, to say, hey, mera campaign live ho gaya hai. And I think the new age one of that was ensuring that remarketing spends for the IP of your companies is at the highest. But I like what you're saying on content itself. I think the distinction that most people should have versus traditional versus the new, which is the digital media, is that traditional media was interrupting content to throw something beautiful and powerful, versus creating something beautiful and powerful and throwing that at the world. And that itself, when your advertising or your effort is not an interruption but a destination in itself, I think that the valuable distinction that you brought in, I think is very, very important for us to imbibe through. And the last one little bit, I thought that you was talking about AA 128 and AA 129. I think that's very interesting, where you're trying to say that segments are narrower, and in many ways you're trying to create customer genomes in segment. I think the value is twofold, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd love to pick your brains on this. Value number one, you're able to make granular segments, and of course, adding more and more values to them as they keep growing and as you keep collecting data. Second, I think over time, you're able to understand how people shift within these segments. Normal segmentation is not allowing you to get changes. And if you are able to understand each arc of the consumer and how they're changing, maybe it is possible to predict where he's likely to go next, what he can be nudged into next, what he can be asked into next. And I think, I don't know if I'm making sense. And I think there is a lot of value in what you're saying in creating micro segments and holding them and seeing the arc of each consumer, and therefore being able to nudge him in the arc or predicting in his arc and therefore sell him something. Does that work?
No, absolutely. So in fact, I think, so I have this line that when I wear the marketing hat, I'm very, very excited about the world and the possibilities. But when I wear the consumer hat, I'm scared as hell. So the amount of data that all of us are collecting, and this is not a new thing, means even like 15 years ago, I used to look at some data that we used to collect, and it used to scare the hell out of me because we knew so much more about the user than I would like to know. Because just imagine, right? We were let's say selling baby products. We had keywords like 7 weeks pregnancy symptoms. Now just imagine, right? That means you almost knew that this person could be 7 weeks pregnant. And that's the kind of data that a lot of marketers at some levels, right? There is a famous Target case study where you're collecting the teenage daughter's pregnancy before the father knew about it, right? So it's scary. But I think one good thing or the thing is that I think this data is so much that all of this happens completely anonymously, where, as you said, it's AA 128. Now there are only 7 people who will fall into the AA 128 category, and all of them will get more relevant content. They'll get more relevant advertising. They get more relevant products. And the thing is that we do this customization in physical world in any case. You walk into a shop, the way you are dressed, the way you talk, which car you got out of, a lot of this data, your real estate site visit, the security guard is supposed to inform inside, ke saab kaun se gaadi mein aaye the. Right? So I work with a lot of real estate clients, and which car he came in is a very important criteria whether he can afford a 20 crore flat or not. Because if he comes in Maruti Alto, he's not going to get a 20 crore flat car demo. Let's get this straight. So I think it's very, very important that the metrics that we are collecting, how can we use anonymously to increase the experience of the user. Today, when Netflix tells me this is the best movies to watch, or Amazon tells me these are other books I should read, it's improving my life, right? So obviously it knows what I purchase, it knows, all those things, right? Like Amazon in US, if I remember right, has something like 90+% conversion rate for Prime customers. That means you are going to Amazon just to buy, right? That customer conversion rates are 2 to 3% in most e-commerce companies in India, and they grew from 1% to 2%, and the goal is 3%. Just imagine 90% plus conversion rates. But that's all coming because of the data that they have, and they're able to connect advertising to CRM. I think that's one of the things that I and Rajesh have been discussing. You connect it. You find that AA 129 is the best guy. You are able to find similar guys like him. There are only 5 other guys in India who are like him. We find those 5, acquire them because they'll give the same amount of profits that this 128 is giving us. And then what we do is, after that, we can then even precisely create content for those guys. Because we know that they are the most profitable customers. This content could be given to them. In return for that, they'll give us business. So just imagine, right, today, I'm just doing some loud thinking. Let's say a movie is released today. Okay. That released movie is given to, let's say, the 50,000 customers you have, and you can give it to 10 of your friends, right? So you get it for free, and those 10 friends that you have also get it for free. So basically what is happening is the brand is spending approximately, let's say, 1,000 rupees a movie for their customer. Now if it's a new movie that has come out, okay, what if a wealth management company in India took up that rights of the movie, right? And I'll say, listen, I will buy 50,000 tickets from you. So the 5,000 customers that I have who give me my entire revenues, I'm going to give that to those 5,000 customers, and you give it to 10 friends for free. Imagine that amount of money or the 50,000 tickets that guy bought. That will be priceless. Because the first guy who does it, because अगर मैं 100 रुपए net worth हूँ, तो मेरे most of my friends also around the similar net worth. And if I want to do favors, I want to give movies for free, right? I may even call that guy up, give me 50 more tickets here. I've got more friends. But imagine, right? There's no theater. It's being released online. You can sell millions of tickets through brands. And imagine that when you want that free ticket, you have to come and scan a QR code to get the free ticket. The QR code collects what phone you have, what apps you have installed on your phone, and all the nice things we collect about consumers all the time with fully GDPR compliant. And this is just an idea that I thought of right now because today Artemis Fowl is being released. I thought to myself, if somebody gave me a QR code to scan to see this movie for free, would I scan it? And in a way, I was almost like, it saves 100 rupees. QR code is simpler rather than going through that whole process of paying 100 rupees. Okay, let that guy have my data. And I being scared of the amount of data that's being collected about me in any case. Imagine if I was willing to do it. Imagine all the other people would be willing to do it. And so I think there is a lot of opportunities that digital is creating for us. But I think we are still looking at consumers, looking at media, looking at brand building, looking at SECA. Even I still get a brief which defines SECA, and I really don't understand. Means what is it? Means why would you have that brief? The guy who buys your product, like just imagine, right? Today, if you don't have a car, you don't qualify. You don't qualify for 95% of the brands because they can't target you. They feel that they shouldn't be targeting you. And you fast forward 5 years, it is not going to change. And the thing is, 5 years time, when I was 17 years old, the only ambition I had in my life was that मेरे को गाड़ी सीखनी है. I want to learn how to drive a car. Today, my daughter, I have to almost force her. God forbid, tomorrow I fall ill and somebody will take me to the hospital. You should know how to drive a car. That's my pitch to her. I have to force her to drive a car. So basically, just imagine, right? And now this girl is never going to buy a car, right? She'll never buy a car. She would rather go for a holiday. That means no brand will be able to reach her, even though she may have the financial wherewithals to buy a few things. So it's scary the way we have taken that 50 years of history. I mean, trying to now apply. In fact, they are forcing us, digital guys, to go back and make things simpler and dumber and put them into that bottle so that they can understand it better. So I had this slide in my presentation which used to say, why digital? And one fine day, about 6-7 years ago, I deleted that slide. It was the most liberating moment of my life. I said, Jo abhi tak, if they've not understood why digital, I don't want to work with that guy only. By God's grace, I don't think I'm going to have any problems where my with that, in Hindi, dal roti is going to come from, and my basic physical needs are going to be satisfied of food, shelter, and clothing. I can afford to not work with that guy who still needs a slide called Why Digital.
Oh, fantastic point, Vivek. I think more than a compass, what you have actually given is a very, very detailed map for brand marketers and for, in fact, people entering the industry to how to think about the future. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure your dad would be proud of you now.
Yeah. So unfortunately, he passed away 6 years ago. Okay. But luckily, what happened was that I sold my company in I think June, and he passed away April of next year. And he told me something which I'll never forget. He says that, I'll say in Hindi, "Tumne meri shaam rangeen kar di." And it was almost a vindication for him. And he would never tell me that, you made so many crores. He would say that you made so many 1,000 lakhs, because he was 86 years old when he passed away. Lakh must have meant something for him, 1,000. So for him, it was this many 100,000, which is the way he would define it. So in hindsight, when sometimes I think, because we grew almost 15x during the earn-out period, if some remote thought comes to my mind, I could have made 3 times more money if I had sold it later. I think that one sentence from my father of the Sham Rangeen Karli, and he would have not seen it if it had not sold when I sold. I think that just, there is no, that's priceless. Even 100 times more money could have not replaced that one sentence that he told me. So I'm so happy he got to see it. If it had happened, if he had passed away even 1 year before he did, I would have regretted that for a very, very long period of time.
Did he ever understand what you ever did? I find it very difficult to explain to my mom what marketing does. And I find it extremely difficult to explain to my mom what digital marketing is. They think I actually do nothing, which probably is true. But have you been able to explain at any point of time to your mom, dad, anybody, what exactly you do?
You know, when thousands of lakhs hit the bank, he understood. He didn't care. He's just like, okay, whatever you do, theek hi hoega. I think that is the only thing that he understood. But you know, he was very, very far-sighted, and he supported me in the early days, even when I was struggling. I think so. I had this practice of going and meeting him every morning before I would go to work, and so many challenges when I think about it. So one of the challenges I faced was that one of our competitors was selling leads at cheaper prices, and he was being unethical about it. He was promising things which was not true. So I asked my father that, you know, your competition is doing something unethical. To compete with him, if you also have to do some parts of it, what is your suggestion? So he told me something that I never forgot. He said that whenever something becomes scarce, it becomes more valuable. So the more scarce integrity becomes, the more valuable it will become. And you just continue your path. And as luck would have it, the competitor went out of business. And he had evangelized the industry for us. We actually benefited a lot because we were the only transparent guys. We had a lot more integrity, which are again 20 examples I can give you, where we went and told clients that this money we owe you because this has come back from Google. We can't afford to pay you, but we will divide that amount that we owe you into a monthly billing. We'll pay you after within 15 months. So I've had a lot of those kind of conversations where we didn't have money to pay, but clients and partners supported us. But in hindsight, right, I think these are the kind of things that could have easily led us astray. And that foresight and that 10, half an hour minute talks with my father made all the difference that I'm getting a chance to interview with you guys rather than struggling in a digital marketing job in some small company.
So Vivek, you obviously had a lot of experiences, a lot of frustrations, a lot of fun moments, and I'm sure you won a lot of awards. I just want to move into a little bit more fun side. I want you to talk about two things. One, something that you're proud of that will never win an award ever in your life. Okay, if there is an incident like that. And two, your most frustrating moment with a client. And I'm assuming you're not going to name that client, but is there some interesting things that you've had? I'm sure you had.
So I think, you know, the challenge, Jemint, has been that when you actually deliver value to a partner, I think you should get an award, not because it's creative and it's the lens of measurement is the conventional media lens. So generally, if you imagine, right, just the maximizing efficiency approach, I think is a very creative approach. It may look as if it is a very functional performance-led approach, right? But it's a lot of thinking that has gone behind it. Even the way to build brands, if we have time, we'll elaborate. It's a very creative approach of using this medium effectively, right? So let me give you one example, right? One of the clients we had is a bank, and we found from Google Analytics that 50% of the traffic they were getting was actually coming from the keyword called bank plus jobs. So I think it was that would end up with CVs where nobody knew where the CVs went, but basically that's what was happening. So if you put a keyword called negative as jobs, right, that traffic would reduce it substantially, but they were searching for us, right? I don't want them not to find us. So what we did was we said, okay, how much were you spending monies on HR acquisitions? We found that customer relationship managers, they used to spend about 40 to 45,000 rupees per person, and they were hiring hundreds of people every month. So we ran a campaign where all those traffic, we took it to this customer relationship manager job. They got 3,000 CVs. They got 128 people they hired from those CVs. The total amount of money saved was 128 into 44,000, right? So let's say 50 lakh rupees. You know what the cost of this campaign was? 68,000 rupees. You know how much we made as an agency? 5% of 68,000 rupees. So just imagine, right? You'll never win an award, right? Because it seems like a very... So just imagine, we did this, the client made probably 50 lakh rupees of immediate benefit, right? And they actually also just look at it, right? 3,000 people who were filling up something and not being responded to. But 3,000 people filling up, it means 50, 60,000 people were landing up on that site and they were not being tapped into. But imagine, right? We made 5,000 rupees on that campaign, and then just imagine, right? What would happen is when somebody else in an agency would get that idea, some senior guy is going to give a tupply on that guy's head. He says, you keep your ideas to yourself. Please think of ideas and make money for us. But that's how it is, right? And the sad part is, I remember we took over a campaign. They had a certain target. They wanted a certain number of leads, visits, etc. And there was so much of wastage on their search account, right? So we reduced their cost and spends by almost 80-90%. They were bidding some $12 for their brand keyword. Now that's absolutely idiotic to bid that kind of pricing for a brand keyword, right? That means, theoretically speaking, somebody else could bid little bit and make these guys pay a lot more, right? And what happened was that if the previous agency was making 100 rupees, basically we reduced their spends to 10 rupees. So we basically started making 10 rupees by saving the client 900 rupees or 9,000 rupees. So just imagine, right? This is how the agency is structured, because I made your account more efficient and by 90%, but basically it ended up resulting in my revenues going down by 90%. Let me give you one other example. We used to work with ICICI Bank 15 years ago, and we decided that we are collecting a lot of information from search. What if you could pass that information to the call center, and the call center could use that information to make calls? So one particular example I remember is there should be a keyword called Novo chairs. I still remember the keyword. These are dental chairs that cost 15 lakh rupees. So any dentist who's setting up a clinic could be searching for Novo chairs. So what happened was, when the lead would come in, we realized that the personal loan was 50 lakh rupees rather than the average of 50,000 rupees. So we almost got the regional sales manager kind of guys to handle that call and tell them that, listen, we'll get you discounts on all the other 35 products you need, where the personal loan rate and all those things became irrelevant, right? Because we were giving them a solution. And then what we did was, somebody was searching for quick loan, we started focusing on speed of dispersal. Somebody was searching for personal loan rates, then we started focusing on competitive value of the offering. So I went and sat in the call center of ICICI Bank for 3 days and trained their team, and they were refusing to give data back to us. So I told them, okay, how much do you sell? So you see, we sell about 3.5 odd numbers, right? So 7 in 2 days. I said, okay, give me this data for one month. Next month onwards, if your 3.5 becomes more, then you continue giving me the data. But if your 3.5 doesn't become more, then don't give me the data. It went to 9 because they were getting 9 sales instead of 3.5 sales in a day. So then they had started having fights in the call center that who should handle the Google AdWords leads. And when that, but just imagine, right? I was doing this 15 years ago, Jemit. The challenge is that this can be done at so many industries. But in fact, the thing is that the more and more benefit the ecosystem delivers to a client, if that results in spends reducing, then the agency gets lesser money. And the CRM is the same, right, Rajesh? That if you are sending 1 million emails, but you can send now more appropriate 100,000 emails that gets clients double the profits, you will get 1/10 the monies that you're getting earlier.
Absolutely right.
So that alignment itself is missing. And the thing is that, imagine, right? All these things should have won awards. And if these things would have won awards, people would have innovated, connected advertising to CRM, delivered so much more benefits over the last 10, 20, 30 years to clients, right? But the thing is, why do you think most of us are spending more and more time in sales and business development? But that's what gives us the most amount of monies, not solving a client's problem. So I think that industry is going to go through challenges, and I hope that we are able to compensate the ecosystem, not only agencies, where the interests are aligned in different ways.
I think what you're saying is very, very interesting. And one of the key points I'm taking away is that minimize waste versus maximize efficiency. When you think very differently on maximization of efficiency, the paradigm of cost, the paradigm of reward, the paradigm of how you recognize changes. Like as a client, I don't think I will ever be able to write on my KRA. I never spoiled the domain rep of my of the email that I'm sending in. And I don't think I expect my bosses to understand that. But I think what you're saying, and I resonate with you from the client side as well, that if you're able to look at the paradigm very differently, I think the way we reward it and the way we look at it and the way we try and make change. So that leads me to the one question, that if you had 2 minutes with, let's say, the CEO, and he's trying to say, Vivek, मुझे पता digital क्या है, कैसे देखते हैं. What is your 2-minute pitch to him that will probably transform his thinking if he listens to you? And I'd like to hear that side of it from you, Vivek.
Yeah. So I think first thing I would tell him that digital is no longer about marketing and communication. It's the age we're living in. And I think you need to have a business objective and an outcome you desire. And the digital partner's job is to help you achieve that outcome. Now, if the outcome is customer acquisition, there are effective ways to do so. The outcome is getting more talent or training them. There are different ways to do so. So I think it should be outcome based, not digital based. A lot of times a client give a brief that I want more Facebook fans or more YouTube views or digital goals. And then the management would always ask at the end of the year that, okay, so what? You got this, but so what? But here what happens if you say that I want to get 30% more business from existing customers, right? That's a very clear outcome. Then the ecosystem and the agency partners and technologies can work towards increasing business from existing customers at 30%. So I think the first thing I would tell the CEO is that make all your goals for digital very, very physical business goals. Don't make them digital goals. Second thing is, I would say is that I think digital is a mindset. It's a mindset for the organization. So if you take today, digital is about taking a compass in your hand and you start walking in the right direction. So you know that the number of internet users in India are eventually going to match up with the population of the country. You know that people are going to spend more and more time on entertainment through digital platforms. You know a lot of things are going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So how can you take steps as a company? So let's say one step is that you need to start building first-party data. You know in 16 months, Chrome is not going to allow third-party cookies. You know as a brand, your dealers, your distributors, and a lot of people who have your data, but you don't have customer data. You know that you are in that ticking time bomb where tomorrow you will not be able to target these users without depending on walled gardens and some other third parties. So I think just understanding that, even if you start collecting today, like let's say one of our companies that I've invested in, they do QR codes on packaging. Now somebody's saying that only 10% of the people are scanning the QR codes. But if you have 40 million customers, 10% scanning it is 4 million. If you have the right raffle over the next 1, 2, 3 year period, maybe you will collect 30% of your customers. Is that 30% not better than zero? Right? So the way I look at it is 30 versus zero. And I think COVID-19, what it did was a lot of brands, their revenues went down from 100 to 10. And they realized that not having first-party data can be so dangerous, right? But the thing is that they're not taking steps in the right direction. So I think having that attitude of taking baby steps and starting. Don't worry about the blueprint to be completed. A lot of times we've lived in a world where we have to cross every single T, dot every single I, and create a blueprint. But unfortunately, by the time we complete the blueprint, something changes. So this is a digital mindset about taking a compass in your hand and you start working. Also, like data-driven decisions, right? We talk about it, but I asked the CEO, he said, no, I have an open cabin. We take data-driven decisions. Everybody, right? Okay, so I told him that, okay, tell me 3 mistakes you've done in the last 1 year. And he couldn't come out with a single mistake. I said, the very fact is you don't know, either your company is not doing much. That's the only way you can't make mistakes. But digital is about, if you take the whole maximizing efficiency approach, it's about making mistakes, right? Because you targeted an audience, it didn't give you ROI, then you drop that audience. It means first time you targeted that 1 rupee out of 100, that means the audience didn't work. So they having the ability to take data-driven decision basically means that you're willing to fire bullets, calibrate them when they hit the target, classic Jim Collins, good to great, then only you should throw the cannonball. So that whole approach again is a digital mindset. So I think as summary, I think what I would like to say to the CEO is that it's very important for him to understand that digital is the age he is living in. If he wants to remain relevant in this world. So, Peter Drucker had once said that there'll be 2 kinds of CEOs in the next 5 years. Ones who will think globalization, think global, and the others who would be unemployed. If you replace the word globalization or global with digital, I think we can make a little bit of a tweak to the Peter Drucker's quote. Because if you don't think digital today, right, I think you're going to find it extremely difficult to remain relevant, regardless of the industry you're in. And I think now this whole COVID-19 has just accelerated this need where if not now, then it's going to be extremely fatal for a lot of organizations.
If not now, then when? If not you, then who?
Yeah, absolutely.
If I hold you there and take a little leap, so we appreciate that the CEO needs to be there. But I think Rajesh, you may have been doing this digital for last 20, 22 years, 25 years. We've gone in the organic understanding mode. A young kid comes and asks me, Jayamit, which course should I do to do digital? How do I get into digital? Digital is hot. I want to now become smart. And I always struggle on how to explain to him. I didn't have any course. You didn't have any course. Rajesh practically wrote the book, but I'm sure he didn't have any course. And these kids want to get into digital. And I find it very difficult to explain or understand because fundamentally, I think he knows digital better than me, but he wants to learn this. When you're looking at these young kids coming in, and you probably meet maximum young kids among all 3 of us, and they want to get into this digital, they want to understand it. What and how would you help them or guide them into coming into this industry? And how would you want to reframe their heads to be successful?
Okay, so let's go back in time. One day when electricity was invented, there was this industry called electrical industry. There was engineering called electrical engineering. And basically what happened was that it was the upcoming thing where it was panacea for all evil. And a lot of people obviously got into electrical engineering and electricity or electrical industry, right? And hopefully made a lot of money. But if you take today, right? How do you look at it? It's plumbing, right? We are talking to each other because of electricity also, right? But what do I need to know about electricity other than that this button, if I press it on, the light will come on or the air conditioner will come on. That's all I need to know, right? So if you take digital today, it's plumbing. It is basically, you replace the word electricity with digital. That's how I look at it. So now what happens is you have to decide as a person, what is the problem you're going to solve? If you're going to solve a problem of computing, then you'll use electricity to create a computer. You want to solve a problem of a vacuum cleaner, then you solve a vacuum cleaning problem using electricity or a battery. Same way, I think digital, you compare it with electricity. So you take every single industry has a challenge and there'll be different digital platforms you can go deep into to solve that industry's problem. So you can't say that I'm going to get into electrical industry because it's a very upcoming good industry. Nobody talks like that today, right? Same way, I think people have to stop talking about digital that way. You want to get into marketing? Great. You want to get into content? Great. You want to get into analytics? Great. You want to get into any other thing? Digital is going to play a role. So let me give you an example, right? My office peon in my office, when we want to order some coffees and teas, all those things, right? We actually WhatsApp him what we want. It's very effective because he knows the difference between coffee and tea and the numbers. There are hardly any mistakes. So it's more effective. I mean, just imagine, I would say that the office requirement of a peon is that he should know digital. 20 years ago, I remember these print ads which used to say that computer knowledge will be preferred. That's not essential, right? Preferred. Right? But just imagine now, letter knowledge, receptionist, an office peon who earns $200 a month or $300 a month is the one who needs to learn basic WhatsApp at least. So why are we even talking about digital industry? You decide what you want to do. You want to become a doctor, you will have to use digital. You want to become a receptionist, you'll have to use digital. Let alone that, if your ambition is to become a peon in the office, you will need to know digital.
So it's fascinating, Vivek. In 1996 or 97, I remember going for a meeting to Amul in Anand. And so they had called me up saying that we want to advertise for the World Cup. So I think it would have been 96. And they did the advertising. It was a year later, okay, that I actually went to Anand and met them. And the MD at that time told me words which I've never forgotten. So I said, you are in the foods business. He said, stop there. We are basically a digital company in the business of foods. I mean, look at the prescience that was there. Exactly what you are saying. I think if every CEO takes this takeaway, that look, we are digital first. Now let's see what business we are in. Let's apply these ideas, like you're saying with electricity, etc. How do I rethink my business? I think the pandemic, this period, is really a discontinuity which is there for many industries, many businesses. And if people can start rethinking, how is it that they do business in the future? This is not a 1 month or 2 month interruption which is there. It's a new way of doing business in the future. The customer has changed fundamentally and will change going forward. I think that's the way to think about one way to think about the future.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that impact will be there on workflows and capabilities that we as employees of various, either the agency side or at the client side, will have to embody, saying that all of us are digital and we are here to solve problems. We use the most efficient manner, and if it happens to be digital, so be it. Whatever we get as a problem, now go deep, you'll automatically get digital.
I think it should be very clearly outcome based, right? So even when you look at new technologies, Rajesh, we've been talking about this technology called QLess, right? So QLess was a support technology. You go to a Vodafone, you take a ticket number, and then it tells you how many minutes you have to wait. So I thought about it was that, let's look at a mall. Now, what happens is only 1,000 people are going to be allowed in that mall, but each shop is going to take only 15 people. So imagine that you take an appointment for a mall with an outside queue. Once you get the outside queue, then you go inside and you get 16 or 15 shops queues. So you can go to different shops, restaurants, etc. And the whole mall management is done by this app. Now imagine, right, if you are a person who is a platinum customer, velvet rope customer, as Rajesh says it, I could jump the queue for luxury shops. You get jump the queue for the mall timings. You can give first citizen program of Shopper Stop special privilege of coming only with other platinum customers. So imagine, right, you have a digital technology which actually allows you to create an outcome in the physical world. The way you look at it is that you have to look at an outcome. You may use whatever methodology you use to create that outcome. And just imagine, right, we all are smiling, but we know the amount of data we'll collect. Yeah. We'll know the shopping behavior, the time they'll spend. We will completely transform the physical mall industry. And at this point of time, in the world of contact tracing, in the world where the person will have to get himself scanned, a lot of things he would have not allowed in the past. And now what happens is, if he doesn't have a choice, right? If he doesn't go into the queue, he cannot go into a mall. But imagine the whole thing, how it can be managed effectively. And I think that's, if you ask me, 20% of the customers, as you give you 200% of your profits. And if you're going to limit the number of customers who engage with you, it's going to be very, very critical that first of all, you find those 20% of the customers, which Rajesh and Netco can find those customers, but then you should know how to activate to get them in the advertising world. And also you should know then how do you going to make sure that they are given priority and they're given a velvet rope vis-a-vis the 20,000 other customers. That's where I think on that note, I think, it's a very interesting world we are living in. I believe we are living in, there is an opportunity today of rethinking some of the things that have existed in the past. But I think if we drop the word digital from digital marketing and sort of call it a digital age, a lot of new interesting business models will come up. And I hope all of us can figure out some opportunities in this crisis.
Hopefully someone out there, the Vivek of 1997 or the equivalent in 2020 is listening. A lot of entrepreneurial ideas out there, whether it comes to rethinking how brands work, how agencies work, what are the options in the physical world. So wonderful session with you, Vivek. Thank you very much. Quick closing thoughts, Jemit.
I think for me, the big one is on maximizing efficiency and the paradigms around maximizing efficiency and the way we think through it, the ability to throw more to maximize it as opposed to minimizing waste. I think that is something that I'm going to carry for some time to come. And with that, how does companies, agencies, compensations, employees work with? I think that is a very, very big thought for me. I think that is something that I wrote in bold and underlined it. I think that is a big one. And I'm so happy, and I look at it and look at Rajesh and Vivek in the company of giants, and I feel that 25 years we've worked, and probably this is our moment in the sun.
Great. So Vivek, thank you very much for the time. Wonderful session. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vivek.